So Trump is screaming for rate cuts, but here's the truth. He does not understand how the Federal Reserve actually works. Powell just defied him, and that one move could start shattering of the housing and credit market, especially in the South, where the majority of the distress is showing up. So, Andrew, we just had the Fed meeting this week. Let's jump into the data and how it went. I'd love for your opinion on this. So, Andrew, you said something interesting that I actually disagree with about Powell reducing rates, already. I think the last time we had 3 rate cuts, we saw mortgage rates actually move up. So just because the Fed can control the short-term interest rates, overnight borrowing rates between banks does not mean that that will actually bring down to long-term rates. And we'll get into that debate later in this, but let's jump straight into the data and what we saw at the last meeting. So the last meeting showed that there was a divided Fed, and it holds the key interest rate steady, defying Trump's demands for these aggressive cuts. So what happened at this meeting, Andrew?
Well, this was the first time in 32 years that we've actually seen 2 Fed governors, not just chair members, but actually 2 Fed governors dissent from the popular opinion and say they want a rate cut. First time in 32 years. It wasn't enough. I mean, obviously nine board members fell in line with holding it steady, but it does show that there is a dissension beginning to break. And it wouldn't surprise me if we saw a quarter point hit or cut coming in September. It also wouldn't surprise me if they hold it steady again. But I do think there is dissension starting to show up in the Fed. It was Fed Chair Bowman and our Fed member Bowman and Waller that were the dissenters.
Yeah, Bowen and Waller, they were the ones that said, they disagreed. And that's the first time since 1993 where multiple governors cast a no vote on a rate decision. So that's pretty interesting. So this is kind of a unique circumstance in history where the Fed is not completely aligned with how they're managing the monetary policy.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And for good reason. I mean, we have been in this higher for longer stage now for a very long time. It's very rare that we would see 5 holding it steady in a row. And at some point, dissension is going to break out. There's just no way it doesn't.
Yeah, well, one of the weird things, too, is like this vote was a 9-2 vote, right? And at the last meeting, it was 7 people saying, we're not going to change the interest rate. So now there's actually 9 people saying we're going to hold steady here. I think the Fed is interested in waiting as long as possible to see what's going to happen with tariffs. And the question mark that I have and that I want to get into is, why would the Federal Reserve reduce short-term overnight borrowing rates when we're not in any sort of crisis period? We are at stable employment. We are at inflation that's at 2.9% when their target's 2%. The stock market's at record highs. We just hit another record high. The companies are humming along. The economy is, apparently pretty strong. And this is what Powell is saying. So it's interesting to me. So this is what was specifically said. If the unemployment rate holds steady and tariffs push up inflation, it'll be hard to justify a rate cut in the next few months, right? And so this comes from chief economist at Comerica Bank. The latest policy decision was a 9-2 vote. It's the first time, again, they dissented in 30 years. Trump has given Powell the nickname Too Late, right? We keep seeing just constant Too Late Powell, right? And getting investigated, going to his the new Fed office and trying to figure out where all this money is going and having arguments on the news about all this stuff and just basically just terrorizing Powell into trying to manipulate him into lowering rates. And why, Andrew, why lower rates now? I want the audience to understand, what is Trump's perspective? What is he trying to achieve by cutting rates in a time period when we're already at all-time highs and the Fed mandate's already being fulfilled?
Well, historically, the Fed is too late. I mean, historically, they're too late. And the Federal Reserve as a whole, especially under Powell, has been very much a rearview mirror Fed, in my opinion. They are very reactive to what happened a while ago. Look at what happened when they cut the interest rates to 0 in March of 2020. It never should have been cut to 0, but they reacted on stuff that has already happened in the past. My challenge to why I think rates should be cut is I don't think the labor market is actually as strong as the data is showing. When you actually start to look at like the BLS jobs report that we see, we're going to get another one tomorrow morning. Literally 93% of the BLS reports that have come out in the last 18 months have been revised lower, not higher. and then revised lower a
This
second
is
time a
true.
month. But
This is true.
now, when you actually go to the QCEW data, so the PLS jobs report is an estimation of what's happened. This is their estimates. The actual data doesn't come out. So they have the jobs report comes out, and then a month later they revise it, and a month later they revise it. Then 2 months after that, the QCEW data comes out, and that is the actual data. That is the real data after all the estimations are done. The QCEW data shows that we have had 0 job creations in the private sector in the last 12 months, that we have been flatlined on the economy. So there is going to be a tipping point where we go from money, the cost of money being extremely high is laborious on businesses. I mean, Powell said it in his own press conference. We are restrictive. If he's saying we're restrictive, that means they are trying to slow the economy still. They're not at that even keel where they feel like it would be they're not restrictive or they are restrictive. He still believes they're restrictive. And if you look at the QCEW data, private sector jobs are flat. They've been flat for a year. And at some point you hit a tipping point. And the problem is with the labor market, when it cracks fast. It doesn't just slowly start to disintegrate. When it cracks, it really cracks. And I do think we're at that point where higher for longer has to stop at some point, or we will see the labor market begin to lose jobs on a mass scale.
Yeah, my only rebuttal to I agree with everything you're saying. Absolutely true. The data keeps being revised down and manipulated, which is pretty interesting. And the way that they do the data is pretty interesting. But these people who are being fired, I mean, they're being replaced with AI, they're being replaced with technology. So the companies continue to just push their balance sheets even higher, and they become more profitable while we have these layoffs. So then you see these people have 2 to 3 to 4 different type of jobs and kind of like a gig economy to piece things together and stay afloat. So, I mean, I think the market is just transitioning into a different type of job market. But let's like actually look at the data that they're putting out. And before we go into the labor data, let's look at the US economy, right? So here's another reason why this came out right before the vote, and the GDP jumped 3% for the second quarter, which was better than 2.3% estimate, reversing a 0.5% decline in the prior period. So they're getting better than expected pace of growth, even though this Trump tariffs are expected to hit later this year and increase, kind of have an impact on inflation. We haven't seen much impact yet. And we'll see what happens. I know a lot of people are saying the suppliers will take the majority of the tariffs and eat those costs themselves. I disagree with that. I think it's completely.
It'll be passed along. But it will be a one-time hit. Inflation isn't a persistent issue. Tariffs won't be a persistent issue. It will be a one-time hit. The only thing I would say about this particular slide, and you and I love that we disagree, but we get along on our disagreements here, is quarter one GDP when it initially came out was positive 2.6%. That was their estimation at the first run, and it ended up negative 0.5%. So for this to come out at 3%, I put about as much weight in this as I do the Bureau of Labor Statistics report. I think BLS needs to drop the L from their name and just call them what they are, which is BS.
Creative. They have to pick some metric on which they're going to consistently track and make their decisions on their monetary policy. Are there other metrics that they can track that you think would be better? Or do they just have to say, we disagree with our own government's data and we're going to manipulate it to a different type of model to say things are worse than they are? And frankly, even if, the unemployment rate goes from 4.2% right now to 4.4%, is that even enough to warrant a rate cut when we've already had so much inflation over the last few years? And the problem with inflation to me, Andrew, is it's compounding, right? So every single year, it just feels like everything is doubling in price every 5 years, and the wages are just not keeping up. And I think, these rate cuts are going to slow down the economy from where it would be. And I'm not even sure that the rate cuts would spur so much economic growth in regards to, especially in the housing market. I think it actually could do some damage to the housing market if we saw a rate cut here with the, expectation of inflation being higher in the future.
I agree on one level, but I think it's important because you brought it up earlier. The last time the Fed cut rates, mortgage rates actually went higher.
Yes.
But you also have to look at the data that came out. And when the Fed cut interest rates, that was on a Wednesday. And on that Friday, that was when we had the absolute gangbusters Bureau of Labor Statistics report that showed 284,000 jobs created that was subsequently revised down to 160 and then subsequently revised down to 80,000. And the market always reacts on the BLS headline number. It never acts on the revisions. And so, yes, mortgage rates went up when the Fed cut rates, but it was also hammered with 3 back-to-back BLS gangbusters jobs reports that ultimately were revised lower. But if you go back and even look at a 60-year history, the mortgage rates, the federal funds rate, and the 10-year treasury never move in lockstep, but they do have a 40-year history, or sorry, an 80-year history of moving together. They're never in lockstep. It's like, going down an escalator with a yo-yo. There's going to be good days and bad days. You're going up and down as you're going up or down. But as a generality, a lower federal funds rate will eventually bleed in as lower mortgage rates. It might not be immediate, but you say, what metric could the Fed use? Personally, I think they need to completely back off of looking at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The BLS, the entire jobs report is such a fictitious number by such a small phone call pool of people. When you have data out there from companies like ADP that measure 17 million actual people on a monthly basis, and ADP's reliability versus 1,000 random phone calls versus 17 million people in a data set where they manage that, they see their employment, they see whether they've been fired, they see what their paychecks look like, they see their raises, they see their pay decreases. I just think we're in a society right now where we can't rely on unreliable data anymore to make big decisions that impact the economy that is the driver of the world.
So you feel that the data that the Fed is basing their decisions on is just made up and faulty data, and there's better data out there?
On the BLS side, yes. I mean, I'm not saying the PCE. I mean, their favorite measure of inflation is the personal consumption
The
expenditure.
core.
I'm not
Yeah.
saying that's necessarily flawed. Very few revisions to that. But when you can take a number like the BLS and say 93% of their reports get revised down and then
Yeah, it's
revised down
bad.
a second time, at some point, me in the mortgage industry, if I had a 93% track rate of telling people your cash to close is $10,000 and it was $16,000, I wouldn't have a job anymore.
You'd be
Yet
fired
somehow,
immediately. Yeah.
somehow this is normal and we accept it.
It is true. No disagreement there. So here's the monthly job creation in the U.S. that came through. Here it is, the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and their numbers are all over the place. Let's look at some more. The unemployment rate, right? We're at 4.2% right now. So we had during those years, 2020, 2021, we had that huge spike, and then it came rocking right down. But we are still towards the historic lows from an unemployment
For sure.
perspective. So the labor economy, according to this data from the BLS, shows that we're still rocking and rolling and doing very well. Yes, it's come up some, but not enough to warrant a rate cut at all. At least that's what Powell's position is. And how is this impacting, real estate? Because Pulte, who's the FHFA, president, he's basically calling for lower rates too, to try to push housing up. He believes that it'll actually push housing up and make housing more affordable, which is what you're saying long term. Maybe short term, no, but long term, it should bring down mortgage rates. But this is the problem. I don't know if mortgage rates are enough. I really think even if rates come down, we still need to see prices come down quite significantly, because median incomes have only gone up 3.6% since 1985 versus the median house price, which is up 5.3 x. So that difference, while it sounds like it might not be that much on this chart, I mean, obviously there's that gap. It's absolutely massive when you're talking to young people today, which is why they're pushing up the median age of the first-time home buyer, is
late 30s now.
38. Yes, they're not having kids, they're not buying houses. So is the solution really rate cuts, or do we just need to let the housing market decline and get back to normalcy? Because this is all Fed induced in the first place.
It is 100% Fed induced, which is why I have such an issue with Powell. Like, we should have never seen mortgage rates at 2.5%.
Agreed.
Should have never happened. It
Yes.
absolutely set us up for what we're in today. I think let's play devil's advocate a little bit on it. Home values need to come down. That's not going to be a popular conversation that they need to.
Especially with the boomers. Right. All the retirements in there.
All the retirement's tied up in it. But let's say we can find a median road rather than home values coming down the 18 to 20% that it really needs to happen. What if there's actually a middle of the road that could happen where interest rates could come down 2%? Instead of a 6.75, we'd be closer to a 4.75 to 5 as a fixed 30-year rate. And home values adjust with that down, say, 10%. It ultimately, no matter what happens, we're just going to kick the can further down the road until we eventually hit another 2008. Are we at the moment right now where we're going to see that housing market truly collapse? It's a possibility, but I also think we have the ability to kick the can further down the road. And guess what administrations love to do? They love to make today's problem someone else's problem 4 years later. And I think if they have the ability to kick this can down the road, they're going to do it. Is it the right move? No, the right move would be to let home prices settle down 15 to 18%, get interest rates down into the low fives, and let the housing market roar again. But there's been so much pent up energy. I think we would be back in the exact same scenario in 2 years.
Yeah, there is a lot. It's an affordability crisis. It's not that there's not demand. People just, it's cheaper to rent. And so prices or mortgage rates have to come down. But this is my point. Like, why would Powell reduce the rates just to bail out, right now, 6 to 8 states that are seeing distress in housing? I mean,
he won't.
That's my point. Like, he's not going to.
I put that on my Facebook the other day. I was like, Powell's not coming to your rescue. He doesn't give a crap about the housing market. He does not care about mortgage rates. Powell's not coming to your rescue. What my argument against Powell is I think the labor market, when you actually look at the actual raw data, is not as strong as he thinks it is. And I think when you start to see an economy of the size of America, where you had a flatlined private sector growth, like flatlined, zero growth in the private sector, I don't think it's as strong. That house of cards can fall. And I've said this for 2 years, 3 years now with Powell. The longer they prop up the house of cards, the bigger it gets and the harder it falls. And I feel like this whole house of cards has just been propped up and it's been propped up and it's been propped up. And it wouldn't surprise me to see housing values come down with rates coming down and finding a happy median between the both.
Well, you're right. I mean, everything's been propped up and the banks do it too, right? Look at the consumerism and the amount of consumer debt we have. I mean, you're a lender. I mean, you can't imagine how many denied loans you have. You're probably scraping the bottom of the barrel for the buyers. It's like the buyers either are like straight up cash from New York or California, or they're like locals that can barely rub 2 nickels together to make something happen. And they're loaded up with student loans, car loans, credit card loans. These things are having high delinquency rates. I mean, it's ugly out there. That's how you know we're at the end. It's not just Powell reducing rates is not going to solve any of those problems. It certainly is going to make it less traumatic when it happens, but it's still going to have to come down and we're still going to have this day of reckoning.
We are going to have the day of reckoning. And you're dead right on what I'm seeing. I'm seeing either people with very, very, very low debt to income ratios, like 3%, because they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month and they're buying $5 million rental properties. Or I'm seeing consumers at 55% DTI with a gift trying to buy an FHA home. Like,
good Lord.
It is in between and there's not much. We're not doing a lot of loans at 30% DTI. It's either the very, very affluent buying very high-end luxury stuff, or it's people just trying to pull it together right now.
That's wild. So while everybody's trying to pull it together, the sellers are getting really sticky on their prices. And if they get super upset if they don't get the price that they want, especially the boomer generation, and they're just like, screw it, I'll take my house off the market. These people can't afford my house, and they stay in these oversized 3,000, 4,000 square foot homes with 2 people. And when it should be a young, thriving family, and they should be downsizing to a 1,200 to 2,000 square foot home. But the problem is their equity is locked up in the house. So if they can't sell it, then they have to stay put. So we're having this little freezing effect. This is an article from Calculated Risk blog from 2007. So right before, it's pretty interesting. So this is housing busts and sticky prices. Prices are sticky when they come up so much. This is because house prices display strong persistence and are sticky downward. Sellers tend to want to price close to recent sales of their neighborhood, and buyers sensing prices are declining will wait for even lower prices. Buyers are sitting on the sidelines, just licking their chops, just like they'll get right. We see applications up, number of applications up, but they're just sitting, waiting for the property to look like a deal, and something, maybe not even a deal. They're just upset that the price is like, why would I pay a $4,000 mortgage when I can rent something similar for $2,300? It doesn't make sense to them. So what we initially observe is a drop in transactions volumes, which we've seen. We're down, 30-40% from the peak, followed by sometime later by price declines. My hypothesis is that we'll see these price declines really accelerate going into the end of this year with seasonality. What do you think?
Yes. I've said it. You and I have talked about this. August 5th. August 5th is your D-Day. Like if you have a home and you're listed for sale,
That's this week, man.
I
It's
know.
coming up.
Because why? Because that everybody's going back to school, and everybody that was planning to move before their kids go to school, that takes a huge percentage of buyers out of the pool. And you look at the charts, like the home sales drop off a cliff August, September, October, all the way through December, and then start to begin to climb their way up, and they peak about June. And so if you're having an issue moving your home right now, it's only going to get
Get
worse
ready.
for the next 6 months.
Yeah. So heads up, reach out to me. If you're a seller with having issues selling your house, drop a comment below. If you see more listings around the neighborhood, drop a comment below. We'd love to see where are you? Where are you located? But we're seeing in Jacksonville massive number of listings coming on and massive number of baby boomers rage quitting and canceling their listings because their agents aren't working hard enough. No, it's because your house is literally overpriced by 20% and you're still living in 2021, 2022 time period. But here's a chart from Resi Club, 1 year change in home prices, America's 50 largest metros. And you can see the majority, and there's charts that came out from Zillow showing like the majority of cities will see a price decline over the next year. By the way, Zillow has the most data. So it's really hard to argue with data. They have all the buyer data, they have all the inquiries, they have more. They are the best projector of what will happen next out of everybody. They're also the most negative when you compare them to all the other people. My guess is probably because they can see how few inquiries are happening around the country when they're seeing listings just continue to skyrocket. But you can see a lot of areas in Florida and Texas are already getting hammered. Arizona, California, even North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama. So the Sun Belt areas and parts of the West are really starting to get hammered. These are the areas that grew the most in terms of price increases. We had 52% increase in price in 5 years here in Jacksonville, which is unheard of. We obviously need to correct down to the downside. I know Andrew's saying 18%, somewhere around that range. My projection of where prices will end up down is about 31 to 42%, according to my models. It depends on the neighborhood and the price point, though. So those are important factors you need to consider for that. We're already down about 10% here in Jacksonville. So this chart is probably a little bit behind. A lot of the areas of Jacksonville are overbuilt. There's overbuilt multifamily. They overbuilt single family properties, and their construction is garbage too because they raced to put them up. And we're already starting to see lawsuits fly. I don't know if you've seen those, Andrew, in the news,
Oh
but
my gosh.
they're
I
getting
see them. There's
destroyed.
one particular builder that I will not mention, but they are like the king of lawsuits.
Is
From the
it Dream
lending side,
Finders?
no, DR Horton.
Okay, well, you're not mentioning it, but there it is. So, I mean, it's just we see it left and right. I mean, it's not like a secret here on that this is happening. It's all public information.
Yeah, we just see it left and right, especially when it's multifamily condos, stuff like that. The amount of litigation for construction defects is it's crazy. People are doing shoddy work, and you're right. I mean, I think there's areas of the country that are still booming. Like I've got friends up north
Yes,
that
look at
have
this chart.
multiple offers on every property. Like every property is going into multiple offers. But there's areas like take Jacksonville for instance. It
This is
is
Jacksonville right here.
Yeah, Jacksonville's not a destination city. And I think that's one of the issues is you have a home price run up of 51% in a non-destination area. Frankly, Jacksonville is an industrial town. Like this isn't a Panama City Beach, for instance,
Yeah.
that has high tourism and people still want to do Airbnbs there. I don't know if a lot of people that are like, you know what, I'm taking my summer vacation and I'm going to go get a Airbnb on Southside Boulevard for the week. It's not a destination location. And for a 51% run up in prices in a non-destination location, that is setting the tone for failure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's just so much supply, and now migration has really slowed and come back to a normal level. But the builders are continuing to build. I mean, once they start their project, they have to finish. The financing is going, the crews are there, and we're still seeing more and more builder supply come on the market. So I think the market inventory isn't telling the whole picture because we're seeing 1/4 of listings come off the market through canceled or expireds every single month, which is out of control. But just again, rage. I don't know how to say it any different. The boomers are just like rage quitting, not selling their properties. The reason I say boomers is because the people in their 30s and 40s, they're moving because they have to move. They got to move for work or whatever. These people who are just saying, nah, I'm not going to sell them, staying put. They're generally older generations that just really don't want to take a loss on their house or have all their equity locked up in their house. And they're like, why would I buy a new house at a 7% rate when I locked in a 2.75? It doesn't make sense. I'll rather just stay in the big house and not move. And I get it. Like, I don't blame them for doing that. But the reality is their house also probably needs $100,000 worth of work at least, because they're generally
and
outdated.
it's overpriced by $100,000, and it needs $100,000 of work.
And that's why.
The thing that I'm seeing that's honestly scary on the lending side right now is you're seeing a lot of people that their home is not moving. So they're going out and getting a bridge loan. And they're going to get a bridge loan so they can buy their next home. And then they're just going to pay the bridge loan off once the home sells. And I'm like, that bridge loan has a 12-month balloon on it. Yeah. And we could be walking into a market where that bridge loan matures. Your home sits for 12 months, especially when it's overpriced. And then you got a big balloon payment sitting there. It's like the whole marry the house, date the rate thing. That is now being replaced with bridge loans.
Yikes. Yeah, that's terrifying. I mean, look, lenders and agents are going to do whatever they can to continue to keep the market going because that's how they get paid. Sellers also do want to move. I mean, we're trying to find creative solutions to make people move. I see a lot of sub-2 transactions come through. Short sales are skyrocketing through the roof. Almost every single day we get calls on sub-2 and short sales. And so I think Florida is going to be rough. I mean, look, there's not any optimism in Florida from this chart moving forward. As you saw, in the north, it looks a little bit better. Now, the U.S. is simply just overvalued. This is a chart from Zillow that basically is saying we're overvalued about 16.5%. So, Andrew, you're right in line with what Zillow is saying. I'm just way more negative on Florida specifically. We've had boom-bust cycles before. This is not the reality where they lie to you and say, oh, real estate goes up 4% every single year, guarantee. There's no guarantees, and it doesn't go up 4% every single year. It goes up some years, 10%, and other years it goes down 10%. I mean, look at these type of waves. It's like a sine wave here. Of course, it's up and to the right, but that's because we've had mortgage rates drop for 40 years. We haven't had a market where we've had, sustained increases in mortgage rates. That's why I think we could see I think we could actually see higher mortgage rates next year is if the labor market does stay hot and according to the data and the markets take that for full, we could definitely see higher rates next year and even lower prices. And I think that's a huge concern for the marketplaces. Now here's again, just making fun of the people who are holding on to their home again. Sorry, you guys, I beat you guys over the head, but the market is softer, but my house is so special. Let's hold out for more offers. Guys, if you're listing and selling your house right now, that first offer is your best one. It is your best offer, and it might be your only one for some period. By the way, buyers are going to be asking you for every repair possible. Yes or yes. I mean, they are going to nitpick your house. They don't have any cash. Don't judge them for it, and don't get upset that your house needs to be updated. Of course it needs to be updated. You've lived in it a long time. The buyers don't have any cash. They're borrowing from friends and family to be able to freaking purchase the house. Work with them, make them happy, make the deal go through, most importantly. So what do you do? So look, if you're rich and you're in the top 10%, this is my advice to you. I think investing in equities is a good thing. Obviously, that's been the case. We're at all-time highs. I personally think because of the big, beautiful bill and the tariff inflation, I think tech is the biggest space. AI is the biggest growth sector. I don't think it's going away. I think we could be in a period of like massive transition for almost every single job over the next decade or two. And I think that's the place to park money. And then be patient, wait for opportunity. I see a lot of investors that are like, I'm going to go buy a rental. I'm going to go do... Why would you buy right past the peak? Real estate is an illiquid asset. It takes time for the prices to come down. Now, if the bottom 90%, so I'll say my piece, Andrew, I'd love to get your comments after this, but if you're in the bottom 90% and you're not benefiting from all the inflation and all the growth in asset prices, you have to grind like hell every day, like your life depends on it, because it does. You need to find a way out of consumer debt as soon as possible. You need to cut your spending. I see this a lot. People refuse to cut their lifestyle, even though their incomes have halved. And they're starting to give back all the money that they made over the last few years just on stupid stuff. Even just going out to dinner a couple times a week, paying $200, $300 a dinner can absolutely destroy your financials. Start building your nest egg, right? So cut everything, start building your nest egg, start building up cash for the opportunity. And then my favorite one, and this has always been true, when you spend time with people who win at financials, you spend time with people who are thoughtful and think about the future and try to plan ahead, you absolutely crush it. When you spend time with losers who just instant gratification, they're faking it, they're loading up with debt, they're pretending to be successful, that is a prophecy there too. There's people even in our market who teach people, spend all of your money so you stay hungry. That is the dumbest advice I've ever heard. And those people are regretting teaching their people that right now, because you never know when the market's going to change. It can't always be sunshine and rainbows. You need to save for a rainy day. And when that rainy day comes, those people who save will make the most amount of money because they will have the opportunity to take advantage of those sellers who are really need to move and have capitulated, and now they can get real estate for cents on the dollar. But spend time with winners and not with losers. Katie, what do you have, and let's take this away.
So if you're in the bottom 90%, I gave a presentation to a bunch of people a couple days ago, and I started putting the slide together, and it just hit me. And because I've walked this road of that, what you lack in talent, make up it for work ethic. But I've kind of come to this realization that there's really only two types of people right now in this world. There are those that create with intention to drive reactions, and then everybody else just spends their day reacting. They spend their day reacting. So take just something like social media. Influencers become rich and wealthy by having initiative to go out and create content. And they become rich and wealthy by people rolling over in bed and scrolling and liking and sharing and commenting. Companies like Coca-Cola get rich based on their advertisements and their product placement. 45% of all Coca-Cola sales in the supermarket come from the product placement in the checkout aisles and the end caps of the grocery store. It's product placement. So my thing is, rather than being someone that is the cog in someone else's wheel, making them famous, making them money, making them wealthy, making them notable, be the person that goes out and create the content, create the solution, go out, be someone that is the creator of it, that creates the reactions from the people that are just reactors. So quit saying I can't do it. Quit saying I don't like myself on video. Go out and just start doing it. I've been following this one girl on TikTok for a month and a half now. I managed to see her first video, and she said, I decided that every time I open the TikTok app, I'm going to record a video. She has 1.1 million followers in 45 days. Because every time she opened the app to be that consumer and the scroller and the reactor, she said, no, I'm going to be the creator. I'm going to be the one that creates something. So go out and quit being the reactor in our society and be the creator, be the innovator, be the one with intention. Act with intention every day.
I love that. Be the creator, not the consumer. That's your way out of the bottom 90%. So look, there's things I can talk about off of YouTube, and I can only talk about them in my newsletter. I'd love to see you join it. You can join it, johnbrooks.substack.com. You can email me if you are looking for a top agent in your area, or you're looking for a top loan officer in Florida. Andrew's your guy. Shoot me an email. I can get you connected. And of course, subscribe, like, and comment to our YouTube. We love creating these videos and adding value. So feel free to reach out anytime with any questions that you might have. And we really appreciate you guys. Thanks so much.